It may be from characters in books or movies, or from someone we know personally. When we share our personal stories with each other, inspiration often results. I start each and every day by saying, "Today's the day." This phrase was coined by treasure hunter Mel Fisher. Several years ago, I found the story of Mel Fisher to be very inspiring, and I will get back to his story in a few minutes. Looking back to the early 80s, in my second year of marriage, I had a child. That same year, I was also divorced. I did not know many people as I had moved to a new town shortly before my son was born. I had no car, virtually no income, and the responsibilities of being a new mom and a single parent. My income was my brand new $28 monthly baby bonus. However, as women, we do what we need to do, so onward I went. And as Kelly Clarkson sings, "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger." I moved back to Windsor for family support and began a job working for an accounting firm, and the starting pay was a whopping $13,000 annually. After 5 years of working there, my salary had creeped up to about $26,000, but I wanted more. It was barely enough to cover my living expenses. I mustered up the courage and met with the HR manager. I asked for a raise and explained why I was an asset to the firm. The HR manager looked at me and said, "Shelley, you are just a secretary. You are never going to make $30,000. That was a shocking moment, and I remember it well. I was just told by the head of HR that I would never go beyond where I was, and I was only 30 years old. Suddenly, I was at the end of a road, and a dead-end road at that. This taught me that if I needed my situation to change, I was the one who had to change it. Nobody else was going to do it for me. I discreetly reached out to a couple of clients that I had worked closely with and confided that I was looking for a new position. 2 weeks later, I had resigned. I was hired by a large corporation, and my starting salary was $32,000. I was happy. I secretly thanked this HR manager in my mind many times later in life because he told me the truth during that interview. Otherwise, I may have stayed longer than I should have at a dead-end job, and most importantly, I may have missed out on the opportunities that would later come my way. After working at the corporation for 5 years, I began to feel that the corporate world just wasn't for me. By this time, I was making better than average salary, but something was missing. I wasn't happy. I wasn't able to use or develop my creative energy, at least not very often. It was in the mid-90s, and the internet was relatively new, and I found this to be an extremely interesting time. Part of my job was to research the internet and report back on what impact it would have for businesses in the future. Wow, that was exciting. I could not believe what I was learning. What I learned became the stepping stone to where I am today. I reported back that I thought the internet would become the way of doing business in the future, and that the corporation needed to get on board with the website as soon as possible to get ahead of their competition. This is when I felt surrounded by opportunity. I had so many different ideas on starting various internet businesses, and I still think that there are a lot of opportunities for people today. My creative juices began to flow. People often ask me how I came up with the idea of the greenhouse business. And during this time, it was when I was researching for the new internet, and I happened to be looking for a greenhouse for myself personally to use in my own backyard. Greenhouses were hard to find, and you had to go to the internet. There just wasn't a greenhouse store anywhere. So for this reason, I thought greenhouses would make a good product to sell online. I also liked that it was a higher priced item. I have always said that it takes just as much energy to sell someone a pen as it does a greenhouse, so why would I sell pens? You've got to sell a lot of pens to make up the difference in revenues. For the next couple of years, my spare time was spent doing more research on internet businesses and putting together a business plan. In 1998, I resigned from the corporation and Backyard Greenhouses was born. It's hard to believe that 20 years have passed. Now, everyone thought I was crazy, including my coworkers, friends, and family. They thought I was taking a really big risk by leaving my good-paying job with good benefits. I wish I would have made money every time someone told me I was crazy. I would have been wealthy in just a few short weeks. I never felt like I was taking a risk at all, though. I was very comfortable stepping out of the box. I asked myself, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen? The answer was that my new business would fail. So if that happened, what would I do? I'd go back to work for someone else, I reasoned. So I didn't think there was any risk at all. It wasn't like I wasn't employable. So I was only 40 years old at the time as well. And I just didn't get why everybody thought it was such a big deal. Plus the startup costs for backyard greenhouses were very minimal back then, and I started the business with about $3,000. So if the business failed, it wasn't like I was out a huge amount of money either. Apparently, my own accountant didn't have too much faith in me either. When setting up the company, I had asked about setting up the tax accounts. And he said, you won't need to set that up until you have sales of at least $30,000 annually. I found this statement to be very alarming. I replied back, of course I'm going to make revenue of more than $30,000 annually. This is my full-time job. This isn't a hobby. I'd like to set up the tax accounts now. So the accounts were set up, and I ended up doing $30,000 in sales in my first couple of months, and everything kind of took off from there. Suddenly, all those people who had come forward telling me I was crazy were now telling me what a great idea I had. I did learn an important lesson here. If you are venturing out on your own or changing careers, please take what other people tell you with a grain of salt. Remember, they didn't do the research that you did, or they may not be familiar with your industry or the products or services that you offer, but everybody has an opinion and you're going to hear them. So if you do need sound business advice, talk to someone you trust or other professionals that are actually in your field. A year later, I started Sika Footwear, specializing in occupational footwear. My research showed there was a shortage of occupational footwear in the marketplace. Research had also shown that claims for orthotics were going through the roof and costing employers millions of dollars. Sika Footwear is imported from Denmark and appeals to those who are on their feet daily, especially those in the medical and hospitality industries. These specialty comfort clogs offer many features, including support and comfort, and they address health issues that can arise by wearing improper footwear. Again, because of this, I thought this was a good fit for the internet. It was a specialty product that you couldn't find to buy anywhere in a store. And many people needed this for their jobs. As an added bonus, I could retain the same customer over and over for several years. Books and gardening had been two very important passions of mine for as long as I can remember. My greenhouse business gave me the idea to write a series of books called The Greenhouse Kids, and my garden inspired me to name the characters. One evening, I was walking around my garden, and I realized that many plants and flowers have the same names as people. I thought it would be really cool to have a group of kids named after flowers and plants, and that they would also share the same traits. So Dandelion, who has spiky blonde hair, and he's growing like a weed, became the main character. Other characters include Johnny Jump-Ups, Foxy Gloves, Hollyhocks, Snapdragon, and Virginia Creeper. It is also interesting to note the connection between literacy and the world of plants and flowers. It's not something that we often think of. But we have family trees. We name our precious children after flowers, names like Daisy, Rose, or Iris. We get to the root of a problem. We can plant seeds for ideas. And in my third book called Dig Deep, we can dig deep within ourselves to find the answers we are looking for. This series is peppered with literary references to the plant world. I finished writing the first book in the series, Dandelion's Secret, and it was published in 2009 by Borealis Press in Ottawa. In 2011, I became a best-selling Canadian author. In 2010, I founded the Readers Grow into Leaders literacy program for elementary schools in our community. Through corporate and individual sponsors, I visit local schools free of charge to present literacy to the classroom. After the presentation, each child is surprised with a free signed book purchased by their sponsor for them. Each sponsor offers the students a personal message on the inside cover of the book, along with their name. As part of the program, the students must send a thank you letter to their sponsor. The goal of the program is to spark an interest in reading and to stamp out illiteracy. There have been approximately $30,000 worth of books given away to our community to date. This is really a fun program, and it's always a joy to work with the kids. I just love it so much. I have received many letters from the students over the years. One little 8-year-old girl wrote that if she could marry my books, she would. She'd be about 17 now, so I'm sure her thoughts on marriage have changed. This program is truly gratifying for both myself and the students. I have never had so many 8-year-olds tell me to keep up the good work. I have with me here today my niece Christy, right in front, and together we wrote The Adventures of Connecticut. This was totally Christy's story, and I helped her to write it. Christy has always been an inspiration to me. This book was published in 2011 when Christy was a grade 11 student enrolled in the special education program at St. Anne's High School. She was born with apraxia, a developmental and coordination disorder that affects motor skills, speech, written language, thought process, and physical agility. Christy has always eagerly accepted all challenges that have come her way. At the age of 17, Christy became one of the youngest published authors in Canada and proves that dreams really do come true. If you haven't met Christy yet, I encourage you all to do so later today. We'll be at the back. So getting back to the treasure hunter Mel Fisher, I'd like to briefly share his story with you. Fisher started out as a chicken farmer in Indiana. He moved to California to open a dive shop in the 50s with his wife Dolores, who was also his business partner. Together they raised 5 children. The family, now young adults, moved to Florida. They hired a dive team and became active treasure hunters. And Fisher started every day with the mantra, "Today's the day," always believing his dreams of finding the Spanish Atocha would come true. While searching in the waters off of the Florida Keys in July 1975, a fierce storm blew in. One of their boats capsized, and his eldest son and his wife and another member of their dive team died. Fisher had struggled for decades, but he still persevered. 10 years later, in July of 1985, his dreams finally came true. He found the Spanish Atocha, which was also known as the Mother Lode or the Bank of Spain. He recovered $450 million in treasure, and that was only half of what was originally on the ship. The other half has still never been found to this day. In addition to finding the Atocha, he found many other shipwrecks in Florida waters, including the Atocha's sister, the Santa Margarita, which was also lost in 1622, and the Henrietta Marie, which sank in 1700, which was the remains of a slave ship. In the big scheme of things, my challenges and obstacles were not great. I did not have to battle stormy seas or lose any family members. We live in an ever-changing world, and we have to constantly adapt. This is very true in business, and you must be able to reinvent yourself or your business on a regular basis. I would like to thank the United Way and Velocity Law for having me here today. Christy and I have our books at the back for sale, and we'd be happy to sign them for you. Or if you have any questions about starting a business or writing books, we'd be happy to help with that too. Remember, today's the day. I hope you all go out into the world and make your own dreams come true. Thank you.